Heartwarming journey. Black man's unexpected stand in cafe reveals incredible truth about humanity. In a bustling cafe nestled in the heart of a diverse downtown neighborhood, a storm of emotions brewed beneath the surface. Marcus, a dedicated 35-year-old black barista and father of two, poured rich coffee and warm smiles into every cup he served. It wasn't just a job, it was a lifeline. Every day, he battled the weight of responsibilities, working tirelessly to provide a better life for his children. Yet the cafe, once a thriving hub of laughter and community, was struggling to stay afloat, leaving an unshakable tension thick in the air. One fateful afternoon, as the afternoon sun cast warm beams through the windows, an unexpected incident shattered the cafe's rhythm. Mr. Thompson, an elderly white veteran known for his gentle nature, was accused of stealing a wallet belonging to a regular patron. The whispers rippled through the cafe, harsh and judgmental. Marcus felt his chest tighten. The man he'd served countless times was now a target of suspicion. As his co-workers exchanged glances, some quick to believe the worst, Marcus battled his own mixed feelings, all while recognizing the pain in Mr. Thompson's eyes. Taking a deep breath, he thought of his father's words, "Stand up for what's right, even if you stand alone." Gathering his courage, Marcus stepped forward. "Hey, wait a minute. This isn't who we are." His voice rang out, surprising even him. The cafe erupted into a flurry of voices. Some patrons defended the accusation. Others rallied behind Marcus, sharing their own stories of misjudgment. A woman recounted a moment when she was unfairly judged at a store, her voice trembling with vulnerability. Each story revealed hidden biases, layers of truth mingling with pain, as the room pulsed with an urgency Marcus had never experienced before. The weight of the moment hung thick in the air, an electric charge coursing through the cafe as people grappled with shifting perspectives. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just then, the cafe door swung open and in walked Marcus' estranged father, a Vietnam veteran, his face lined with years of regret. The air shifted as their eyes met, an unspoken bond connecting them across the crowded room. The reunion was heavy, a collision of past hurts and the potential for healing. Side by side, it felt like they could tackle any storm that came their way, both acutely aware of their shared history of fighting for justice. Marcus turned back to the community, feeling a rush of determination. He initiated plans for a community event, a day of understanding, where stories would be shared and voices heard. As the cafe buzzed with a renewed spirit, hope whispered through the air. But just as momentum built, new tensions began to brew, threatening to pull the community apart once more. Now, standing at a crossroads, Marcus contemplated his next move. Could he really change the narrative around Mr. Thompson? Would his commitment to truth and justice ultimately prevail against the misconceptions that lingered? And as the cafe and with it, the neighborhood teetered on the edge of unrest, one question lingered in the air. Would the bonds they forged stand strong against the storm headed their way? As the chatter of the cafe began to die down, Marcus stood at the front, the weight of expectation creeping heavily on his shoulders. His father, Frank, settled into a nearby chair, watching silently. The familiarity of his presence stirred deep feelings, a mix of anger, love, and a longing for closure. But today was not about them. Today was about the community. "I want everyone to come together this weekend," Marcus called out, his voice steady despite the uncertainty nipping at its edges. "Let us organize a day where we can share our stories. A day of understanding." He glanced through the crowd, seeking reactions. Some faces lit up with hope. Others remained skeptical, furrowing their brows as they whispered among themselves. The cafe's dynamic shifted. A woman with glasses perched nervously on her nose raised her hand. "But what if it just turns into another argument?" she asked. "What if we can't find common ground?" "Great question," Marcus replied, animated by the challenge. "But every conflict starts with a story. If we listen instead of judge, We might just find what connects us. He felt a spark of determination ignite inside him. Mr. Thompson, visibly shaken yet touched, stood up slowly. I just want to say I never meant to cause any trouble. I've been coming here for years, and I've loved this place, he said, his voice trembling. It breaks my heart to think I could hurt someone. I just lost my wife, and honestly, I could really use friends right now. A wave of softness rippled through the crowd. People exchanged glances, the realization that their judgments may have cost them more than they understood. Just like you. I felt that hurt, chimed in a young father at the back, his hands around his son. I've dealt with my own issues, losing my job, struggling to keep food on the table. I've been judged too. The acknowledgement stirred something deeper within the crowd, a connection woven through shared pain. Slowly, others began to share as well. Conversations erupted like unexpected fireworks, each story revealing the cracks in their facades. The walls built over years of prejudice began to crumble, revealing raw, vulnerable humanity beneath. Amid the unfolding connections, Marcus's father held his gaze steady on him. There was an unspoken acknowledgement of the journey they both had ahead, but even Frank now felt the pull of the growing community, the power of shared experiences. As laughter and tears mingled, hope hung thick in the air. It felt almost tangible. But in the background, murmurs of concern continued to bubble. Would everyone be willing to open their hearts? Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that not everyone would be on board when the weekend arrived. As the day drew to a close, he felt a surge of hope, but also apprehension. What if some chose to resist? What if the long-held biases couldn't be melted with just words? Stepping outside into the cool evening air, he encountered Frank. You know this one be easy, right? His father remarked, breaking the silence. Marcus nodded, heart pounding. Was he ready to face not just the community, but his own father as well? Together, they moved towards a distant horizon, uncertain yet hopeful. The question loomed like a storm cloud above them. Could they weather the chaos of old resentments and navigate this new path together? The weekend dawned gray and overcast, the skies heavy with promise. Marcus awoke with the sounds of raindrops tapping softly against his window, each drop echoing the thrum of anticipation building within him. Today was the day that much was clear, but as he pulled himself out of bed, doubt crept into his mind. Would enough people show up? Would they really share their stories? Would it even make a difference? He dressed in a simple shirt, the fabric soft, slightly worn but comfortable. In the mirror, he caught a glimpse of himself. A mix of determination and trepidation reflected back. Memories of the night before flooded him, laughter, tears, unexpected connections. Those moments ignited a fragile hope that today could be similar. Arriving at the café, Marcus's heart raced. The familiar scent of coffee and fresh pastries hung in the air, warming the otherwise chilly atmosphere. The café, usually a hub of isolated chatter, was buzzing with an energy he had never felt before. People were clustering at tables, some exchanging laughter, others speaking in hushed tones, their expressions taut with excitement and apprehension. He looked around, searching for his father. Frank stood near the entrance, glancing nervously around the room like a deer caught in headlights. When their eyes met, a wave of understanding passed between them. Today, they were on the same side. Marcus took a deep breath and stepped onto the makeshift stage at the front of the café. Thank you all for coming, he began, his voice barely above a whisper, yet it carried through the room. Today isn't just about sharing pain. It's about finding a way to heal together. From the crowd, a woman in her late 40s stood up slowly. I'm Charlotte, she said, her voice strong yet tremulous. I've lived here my whole life, and I've seen how division can tear apart our community. How can we bridge the gaps when we've built walls? With every word, Charlotte drew others into her story. She spoke of lost friendships, neighborhoods divided by fear, and how pain often disguised itself as anger. As she talked, Marcus felt the emotion swell around him, raw, powerful, and palpable. It was contagious, cascading like ripples throughout the crowd. Encouraged by her vulnerability, a man named Rico chimed in. I've been so angry for so long. I lost my brother to violence. It makes it hard to see past the pain. His voice cracked, and the room drew in a breath. There was a collective weight in his confession, one that hung between them, thickening the air. More voices joined, weaving a tapestry of grief, struggle, and hope. Yet, amidst the sharing, Marcus noticed a few familiar faces still wearing skepticism. He caught sight of Clara, a woman known for her sharp tongue, arms crossed defiantly. Hesitantly, he approached her. "Clara, what is on your mind?" She hesitated slightly before responding. "I just don't know if we can truly let go of what divides us," she admitted, her brow furrowing. "Maybe we don't need to let go," Marcus suggested, "but we can learn to acknowledge it. Together." As the afternoon wore on, laughter mingled with tears. There was something transformative in the air, as if the downtrodden walls were finally coming down. But just as hope surged, the cafe door swung open, and in walked a group Marcus had never expected. The town's elders, their glances hardened and faces tight. Had they come to sabotage? To judge? And in that moment, the air crackled with a new tension. What if this day, meant for connection, turned into something entirely different? As the elders approached, Marcus's heart raced. Would they listen? Or would their shadows loom over the light they were building? The elders surveyed the room, their presence imposing. Faces buried in conversation hushed. Eyes turned to witness this unexpected turn. Marcus's breath caught. He could feel the swell of uncertainty across the crowd. Frank's hand rested on his shoulder, grounding him as Marcus fought the urge to retreat. He chose to stand firm. "Who's in charge here?" One of the elders barked, a gnarled hand resting on the back of a nearby chair. The tone was sharp, carrying the weight of authority and expectation. "I am," Marcus replied, surprising himself with the steadiness of his voice. "We're having a community meeting. We're sharing our stories, our struggles. We're trying to connect." How desperately he wished to believe that connection was possible, even amid those hardened faces. The elder narrowed his eyes, scrutinizing Marcus as if he were weighing worth. "Connection? It's easy to talk about unity," he muttered. "But what do you know of it? You and these people," he gestured at the assembly with disdain, "are just whispering into the wind." A tense silence enveloped the cafe, thick as fog. It hovered between them, threatening to choke out the fragile air of hope Marcus had worked to cultivate. Charlotte quickly spoke up. "We know of struggle and division. We are the ones tearing down walls, not building them. This isn't just talk, it's our lives." Her eyes burned with a fierce defiance. "That's right," Rico added, his voice trembling not from fear, but from the stirrings of anger. "We've lost too much. We're tired of being divided. We want to heal." As they spoke up, others joined, intertwining their own tales of hardship and hurt. Marcus watched the elders' expressions shift incrementally from contempt to contemplation. "You think your stories matter?" One elder's facade wavered, an inkling of curiosity evident in his brow. "But these wounds, they are ingrained. Can you truly rise above them?" With every question fired, Marcus felt the paralyzing fear shrink within him. "Each of us has been shaped by our pain," he said, voice rising above the murmurs. "But sharing our experience isn't about dismissing our struggles. It's about recognizing them to heal. It's about bringing us closer, not pushing us apart." Tension in the air wavered for an instant, an invisible line drawn, trembling under the weight of unspoken words. The collective hearts in the cafe ached together, a rhythmic pulsation of disbelief and hunger for something different. And then, without warning, an elder stepped forward. His expression softened as his gaze swept over the room. "It's easy to forget when you've carried the weight of history for so long," he said quietly, his voice nearly breaking. "Perhaps we could listen for a moment." An electric current rushed through the cafe. Hope repaired within their hearts, stretching across the lines that had long divided them. Just then, Frank spoke up, his voice steady and clear. "This isn't just for us. It's for future generations. We need to build a legacy of understanding." At that moment, the cafe turned into a sacred space, not just for sharing sorrows, but for giving light to fresh intentions. Marcus felt a change growing, like roots pushing through the soil in springtime. But before they could build on that moment, a loud crash came from the back of the cafe, a disruption that sent everyone's hearts racing. Who had stumbled upon the fragile harmony they were creating? Would it be what they feared? Or could it be a new voice joining their conversation? As eyes turned toward the source of the noise, Marcus held his breath, the pulse of the cafe matching his own anticipation. Would another story emerge from this unexpected chaos? The cafe fell into a hushed silence, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. All eyes turned to the cluster of chairs at the back where the noise had erupted. A young girl, no more than 10, stood wide-eyed and frozen, a fallen tray at her feet, shattered glass glinting under the dim lights. "Sorry," she squeaked, her voice barely rising above the murmurs of surprise. The embarrassment painted her cheeks a deep crimson as she quickly knelt to gather the pieces, her hands trembling. Marcus took a step forward, instinctively crouching down beside her. "Hey, it's okay," he said softly, offering a reassuring smile. "These things happen. Let us clean it up together." He could feel the tension in the room shift again, the sharp air of judgment easing, replaced with compassion as onlookers watched the scene unfold. Frank joined him, helping the girl gather the splintered shards. The girl's eyes flickered with gratitude, and an almost tangible sense of community began to swell in the cafe, even from a simple gesture. "What is your name?" Marcus asked as he reached for a particularly jagged piece. "Isla," she murmured, her gaze flickering between the two adults. "It's nice to meet you, Isla. You know, even grown-ups sometimes make messes. It's how we deal with them that counts." His words hung in the air, resonating deeper than any debate had before. It swept through the room, mixing with the shared stories like threads, weaving the community closer together. Marcus glanced around, noticing the diverse faces of the patrons, their expressions shifting from concern to approval, slowly realizing that connection could lie in small acts of kindness. "Can we help too?" a woman called out. The wave of voices chimed in, urging Isla and the two men to let them pitch in. Others rose, offering napkins, their smiles brightening the dim cafe like sunlight breaking through clouds. The elders stood at the periphery, their hardened features softening. One elder took a step forward, his brow furrowed less in disdain and more in contemplation. This is unity," he said, almost to himself. The realization seemed to shimmer in the air, drawing threads tighter. As the cleanup continued, the cafe became a hive of energy. Laughter mixed with conversations, touching lives and moments both simple and profound. Marcus observed as connection blossomed among the attendees, catalyzed by Isla's innocent slip. Each person leaned into one another, sharing small moments of vulnerability and warmth, building a newfound sense of belonging. "We have the power to listen," he called out through the din, his voice a rallying call. "Together, we can weave these new stories, more vibrant than any past strife." Isla grinned, her confidence bolstered by the support surrounding her. Collectively, they finished cleaning up the last of the glass, but the true task had only just begun. As they settled back into their circles, some sharing new perspectives and others recounting smaller stories, Marcus felt a weight lift from his heart. But just as hope soared, a voice rang out again, cutting through the revitalized camaraderie. "But what about the real issues? What about the struggles we face every day?" An older man stood at the edge, a look of skepticism on his face. All eyes shifted back to him, the moment hanging in the air like a pendulum. Would this lead them back to division, or could it spark an even deeper conversation, one that truly addressed what lay beneath the surface? Marcus could feel the energy in the room shift once more. The path forward was still uncertain. How could they rise to the challenge when it seemed so daunting? What truths were yet to be uncovered? The older man's words hovered in the air, heavy and expectant. A mix of unease and curiosity rippled through the cafe, like a sudden gust of wind stirring fallen leaves. Marcus could see doubt etched on the faces around him, the once shimmering goodwill beginning to fade. But he felt a fire igniting within him, urging him to push forward. "Let us talk about it," he proposed, a steadiness in his voice that surprised even him. "What real issues do we face? What struggles are we carrying?" The room was quiet, listening. The older man stepped closer, his posture slightly more relaxed. "Life isn't just about slipping on a glass. It's about poverty, violence, and division. You don't just wake up and decide to be united. Those problems loom over us day in, day out." Nods of agreement rippled through the crowd. Marcus swallowed hard, even knowing there was truth in those words. He could feel the weight of their reality resting on his shoulders. "I hear you," Marcus said, his eyes scanning the sea of familiar faces. "We can't ignore those struggles. But what if this," he gestured around the cafe, "is a step toward something bigger? If we can connect over a small moment, isn't there room for these conversations too?" "Sure," a woman from the crowd piped up. But how do we keep that connection alive once we leave this cafe? What happens tomorrow? Her fear was palpable and resonated in the head nods from many around her. A collective breath hung in the air, an acknowledgement that their struggle was shared, but so was their hope. Isla stood nearby, her little hands fisted, her eyes wide in contemplation. It was heartwarming to see her innocence amidst grown-up questions. Maybe, Marcus continued, feeling the rhythm of the conversation building around him, we start by not just hearing each other, but really listening. Instead of debating, we share our stories, our fears, our dreams. Every voice matters. But how do I tell my story? The elder entered the conversation again, his voice low, as if recalling a past long buried. When no one seems to care or even notice. All eyes locked onto him, the cafe quieting down once more. An uncomfortable shift passed through the patron's truth, too raw to ignore. I think people care, Marcus replied, emphasizing each word. Sometimes it just takes a nudge to bring those stories to light. Islands can connect, they just need a bridge. Hope hung in the air, lighting a spark in many. Several voices chimed in, sharing bits of their pasts. One man spoke of his struggles after losing his job, how that spiraled into a long battle with depression. Another woman recounted her fear in raising children in a world that often felt hostile. Each voice, once distant and disconnected, began to weave a tapestry of shared experience. The cafe transformed from a place of individual chaos into a collective heart, a gathering of stories filled with pain, hope, and resilience. As the evening went on, laughter mingled with tears. Even the older man smiled, a warmth blooming on his face as he connected with others who carried similar burdens. They all began to recognize the power of communal storytelling and invitation to not just listen, but to engage in everything they dared to share. But just as comfort settled in, the cafe door swung open again, and a new figure entered. The chatter quieted, and all eyes turned towards the mysterious newcomer. Was this stranger about to add a new thread, one filled with tensions they hadn't yet uncovered? Marcus felt his heart race. What awaited them? The moment lingered, pregnant with possibilities. The figure stood silhouetted against the light from the street, casting an elongated shadow that seemed to stretch towards the center of the room. A tall young man, maybe in his late 20s, with sharp features and an earnest expression. His clothes were slightly disheveled, but he held himself with a quiet confidence, like someone who was used to defying expectations. What is going on here? He asked, his voice steady yet curious. The room shifted, a collective breath drawn as the tension transformed into anticipation. Marcus felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Who was this guy? Could he add to the warmth that had begun to blossom, or would he bring something darker? Without overthinking it, he took a step forward. We're sharing stories, Marcus replied, gesturing towards the circle of chairs and tables. About struggles and hope. Would you like to join us? The young man's brow furrowed for a moment, and then he stepped inside, nodding. I actually have a story worth telling. The older man who had initially stirred the conversation leaned forward, curiosity sparking in his eyes. Proceed, then. I grew up in a neighborhood where violence was just another part of life. He began, his voice gaining strength with each word. The cafe felt electric as they leaned in closer, captivated. My friends and I had dreams, but it often felt like the world was rigged against us. I used to think that if I stayed quiet, maybe, just maybe, I'd be overlooked, and that would keep me safe. But it didn't work that way. A murmur of understanding swept through the patrons. This was a voice they hadn't heard, a truth that resonated in places they hadn't even known existed. He continued, I lost my best friend to violence. The day he was shot, I had planned to show him a new job opportunity. We had our whole lives ahead of us. Hadn't even started really living yet. After that moment, I realized I couldn't stay silent anymore. I had to fight not just for myself, but for the stories of so many others. Isla's eyes widened as she regarded him, her small hand gently tugging at Marcus's sleeve. He smiled at her, feeling their shared hope fill the room. I started a community group, the young man elaborated, a flicker of pride now shining in his eyes. We're channeling energy into something constructive. We focus on mentorship, teaching kids to channel their struggle into resilience instead of despair, to stand together. Throughout the cafe, quiet nods turned into murmurs of approval. There was a turning point. Hope was spilling from this stranger-esque story like vibrant paint on a blank canvas. We had our setbacks, sure, he added, his voice growing more passionate. But each voice that joins us adds strength to the chorus. Your stories matter, and they ripple out, creating change in ways we can't always see. The crowd began to share looks of recognition, a shared understanding that his message reflected their own desires for change both collectively and individually. Marcus couldn't shake the feeling of unity solidifying amongst them. Maybe it's about what happens next, he ventured, emboldened by the young man's presence. How do we take these stories, the pain and the hope, and grow from them? How can we bridge these divides? What comes after? The newcomer's eyes gleamed with something unspoken. It's about action, he replied. It's about reaching out, touching lives, and never letting isolation creep back in. We can't afford it. Just then, a woman raised her hand, her voice cracking with emotion. You've all given me the strength to talk about my own pain, the struggles I've encountered raising my daughter alone. But I feel lost, unsure if my story will matter. Suddenly, another man joined in. What if we all shared those moments? What if we created a bigger platform? The cafe filled with energy as voices pieced together a collective action plan. Ideas flew, each suggestion growing bolder, spurred on by a sense of community that sliced through the weight of their shared struggles. As the discussions continued to swell, Marcus felt a surge of hope, but beneath that lay a thrilling uncertainty. He could sense the air vibrating with possibility, but also tension. What were they really stepping into? In that moment, the door creaked open again, and another figure loomed, a storm cloud returning to their sunny gathering. Who could it be this time? Marcus's heart raced as he braced for what was to come. What would this encounter reveal? The atmosphere shifted in the cafe, a heavy veil of apprehension wrapping around them all as the door swung fully open. The newcomer stepped inside, revealing a woman with sharp eyes and an expression that radiated authority mixed with something akin to apprehension. She wore a long, fitted coat despite the warm air inside, and her hair carefully plaited framed her face with a striking elegance. What is going on here? She asked, her voice firm but eyes scanning the room for familiar faces, searching for context. It seemed to Marcus that the mood darkened at her arrival. He exchanged wary looks with the man who had just shared his poignant story. The mix of hope, possibility, and warmth was suddenly contested by an undercurrent of tension. We're sharing stories, Marcus replied, willing his tone to remain steady. About struggles and finding hope amidst it all. He gestured to the circle now filled with their eager faces, pulsating with energy. I heard enough from the street, she replied, her tone a mix of suspicion and frustration. You don't know who might walk in here. Sharing stories can sometimes lead to sharing too much. The words landed heavy, kindling a flicker of discomfort in the members of the group. The camaraderie that had begun to form felt fragile. The young man who had shared his story shifted, his seemingly bold demeanor less certain beneath her gaze. The older man, whose name was still unknown to Marcus, leaned closer to the newcomer. We're trying to build a community. We're trying to face our struggles together, not hide from them. She sighed, visibly wrestling with a mixture of skepticism and intrigue. Maybe there's merit in that, she said slowly. But what if the pain you share is then used against you by those who don't understand? The world doesn't treat every story with kindness, you know? In that moment, Marcus began to grasp her point. What if their vulnerability was a double-edged sword? But as he took in the faces of those around him, Isla, the woman with the daughter, the passionate young man, he felt their building momentum. That's true, Marcus said, his voice capturing the attention of the group again. But by sharing our stories, we also show our strength. Isn't that the very essence of community? We can rise above the fear together. The room grew quiet, absorbing his words. Something flickered in the newcomer's eyes, a hint of understanding mingled with doubt. Look, she said finally, softening slightly. If you're going to do this, you need to do it smart. Use the stories wisely. They matter, but sometimes the world is not ready for the truth. The unexpected alliance forged there, even amidst uncertainty, felt palpable. They were all experiencing a moment of connection, a rare understanding. And then, as if drawn by an invisible thread, another person pushed through the cafe's door. Their presence shifted the energy once more, a new chapter waiting to unfold. But Marcus couldn't fully discern if this arrival would bring them closer to healing or plunge them back into doubt. Who is it this time? He whispered to Isla, his heart racing. Are we prepared for what this newcomer will bring? As silence etched itself across the room, the weight of anticipation filled the air, quivering with potential. What revelations lay dormant in this uncharted moment? Would they gain further insight into their shared humanity, or would they be thrust into more darkness? The door creaked open again, leaving Marcus hanging on the precipice of a change only destiny could reveal. The figure that stepped into the cafe was just as surprising as the last. A tall, older man with a wild shock of silver hair and a leather jacket that looked like it had seen a few too many adventures. Marcus's breath caught a moment. He felt the shift in the air like a sudden gust. This new arrival carried a weight of experience in his eyes that both intrigued and unsettled the group. "Excuse me," the man said, his voice deep and rumbling like distant thunder. "I couldn't help but overhear. Sharing stories, you say? I might have a tale or two worth listening to." There was a slight ripple among the seated faces, an undercurrent of curiosity mixed with caution. The woman in the long coat stood a little straighter, her sharp gaze now assessing this new presence. "What kind of stories do you have?" she challenged, her earlier skepticism returning as she crossed her arms defensively. The older man met her gaze without flinching. "The kind that remind us why we share in the first place. Pain, joy, resilience, they intertwine like the roots of a strong oak tree. Pull one out, and you threaten the whole thing." His words carried a depth that struck a chord. Marcus felt a stirring in his chest and electricity, a connection forming. The group leaned in, pulled by both the man's vigor and the gravity of what he had shared. "Please," Marcus urged, hoping this man could lift the atmosphere that had begun to dim again, "share with us." "All right," he nodded slowly, letting his silvery curls catch some of the light. "Once upon a time, I lost my family to fate's cruel hand. A car accident." His voice softened, the gravity of his tale hanging in the air. "I thought I was done, lost to sorrow. But one day, a stranger caught me staring at my own reflection. He told me, 'You're not just that loss. You're every moment you held dear. Honor that. Share it.'" The cafe fell silent, each person absorbed. Marcus could feel the shared breaths, energy coiling amongst them. The older man's eyes roamed the crowd, bringing them along on his journey. "From that day on, I dared to talk about my wife and kids, to relive not just the sorrow but the joy we created. I began to see how opening up healed me, that our stories are bridges, not barriers. They connect us." As he spoke, Marcus glanced around the table. He caught Isla's eye, noticing the moisture gathering there, the hint of tears that could be surfaced during the man's account. The passionate young man, usually vibrating with energy, sat transfixed, absorbing every word as if it were a lifeline. "Sometimes," the man continued, "I found strength not just in my memories, but in the people I shared those stories with. We become stronger when we let others in." "Where did that get you?" the woman in the coat challenged again, skepticism flickering in her voice. He smiled with a glimmer of hope. "I started a local group like this one, but more focused on remembering the joy amidst the pain. We shared stories, and though the loss never fades, we learned to carry it together." The tension in the room loosened, laughter breaking at unexpected points. There was a warmth blooming between them, driven by an understanding of loss and the resilience it required. This was not just a cafe anymore. It was a sanctuary of shared humanity. Marcus felt a buoyancy building, a wave of emotion that was both exhilarating and terrifying. "What if we could do that here?" he ventured, excitement making his voice tremble. "What if we start our own stories?" A collective murmur spread through the cafe, sparks lighting up faces with newfound determination. They could see the possibility before them, like the dawn breaking after a long night. Yet, as the energy buzzed around them, the woman in the coat remained guarded, her sharp eyes still calculating the moment, waiting for something perhaps to pull back the curtain to reveal a darker truth. Just as Marcus dared to imagine what they could achieve together, she took a step forward, her expression unreadable. "I'm not convinced this is safe, but maybe you'll prove me wrong," she said, the challenge hanging in the air. And there, amidst their newfound hope, a question loomed. Could they truly embrace both the light and the shadow of their stories? Would they end up healing or unleashing something far more unpredictable? Marcus stood at the threshold of uncertainty and possibility, feeling the weight of the cafe hang heavy in the air. As the woman's words sunk in, he challenged himself to see the moment not as a threat, but as an opportunity, a chance to affirm what had blossomed, even amidst doubt. "Let us embrace that uncertainty," he declared, his voice rising above the murmurs. "Our stories might bring healing, but they can also expose vulnerabilities. That's real, and that's okay." Eyes shifted towards him, and that collective breath hung, suspended like a heartbeat. The woman in the coat nodded, her posture relaxing just a fraction. "Maybe you're right. But what happens if someone reacts negatively to those stories?" "We stand together." The older man stepped in, both wise and resolute. "Unity lies in vulnerability, and they want to shake that." A sense of resolve rippled through the cafe, even as the air hummed with tension and apprehension. Marcus felt the shoulders around him straighten, the undercurrent of shared purpose igniting bonds that hadn't existed before. "Let us not ignore the shadows," he continued, feeling the warmth of support wrap around him. "Let us shine a light on them. They've always been there, but now we have a chance to share. We can bring forth dialogue and understanding." Charlotte piped up, driven by a sudden surge of courage. "I want to share my story. I've held on to so much fear about losing what I've built. I worried society would see my daughter and me as burdens. But you support me through this, and I've started seeing hope where I thought there was only peril." Her words resonated deeply. One by one, others chimed in, sharing feelings wrapped in fear but intertwined with hope. "I used to believe I could make it on my own," the young man with the passion spoke, emboldened. "But now, I see that we're all fighting our battles together. Connection means community." The atmosphere thickened, teetering on the line between vulnerability and strength. It felt like the cafe was pulsating with every story shared, emotions cascading through it like an unstoppable tide. Isla glanced up at Marcus, her eyes wide with wonder. "Will it really help?" she asked, the innocence of her question cutting through the tension. Marcus knelt down to her level, a soft smile on his face. "It does help, Isla. It shows we're not alone. And that's a big deal." Suddenly, the cafe door opened once more, and in walked Mr. Thompson. The weight of suspicion had faded as the community rallied, but he still bore the marks of that painful incident, the worry in his eyes lingering like a timid shadow. "Could I join?" he asked, a tinge of desperation in his voice. "Always." Marcus beckoned him in, and as Mr. Thompson approached the circle, the change in the atmosphere was palpable. "I didn't mean to disrupt. I want to share what I've learned," he said, settling into a nearby seat. "But more importantly, I want to listen, to learn from each of your stories." "See," Marcus whispered to Isla, pride swelling within him. "We're becoming something bigger." As laughter and tears mingled in the cafe, excitement illuminated the faces around him. They began to weave a tapestry of shared experience that was more powerful than anything Marcus could have hoped for. The woman in the coat, despite her earlier skepticism, felt a tug in her heart as she watched the ascendancy of hope. It was unexpected but undeniable. "Maybe," she allowed, her voice softer, "there can be strength in that." Each story unfolded, reveal by reveal. The cafe transformed into a sanctuary, its walls imbued with a shared history, the laughter of children, the warmth of home-cooked meals, the strength of resilience. As they shared, something miraculous occurred. The cafe's atmosphere shifted distinctly, as if the room itself exhaled relief. Hope flooded through them, dissolving the remnants of fear. By the end of the evening, Marcus observed the tears and joy merging, pushing boundaries, unveiling light amidst the shadows. And as he looked around, he realized this was at the very meaning of community. It was not just about healing individually, but together, their voices woven into a symphony of understanding. From skeptical beginnings, they had reached a shared vision that illuminated paths ahead. And he knew right there, in the heart of that cafe, a new beginning had emerged. As he took a moment to breathe, soaking in the warmth that enveloped him, it became clear. This was just the start. They would take this momentum beyond the cafe, perhaps to a community center, into schools, into the lives of families that needed it most. The ripples of their shared stories would create waves of change, transforming individuals long forgotten into thriving communities. With a smile that stretched from ear to ear, Marcus glanced up, Feeling his father's presence beside him, his heart fuller than ever. This is only the beginning, he murmured as friends, family, and even strangers turned into the souls of a united community. In that bustling cafe, lives intertwined, capturing the essence of humanity, graffiti and hope on the fabric of their existence. And in the spirit of that radiating love, the scene illuminated a profound truth. The power of stories wasn't merely in sharing pain. It rested in the wholesome forms of connection, bridging divides, binding hearts together as they face tomorrow not as strangers, but friends, family, and community. Now, here comes your moment. Do you want to witness more incredible transformations like this? You need to subscribe now to the channel. Leave a like to feed the algorithm and help us craft more heartwarming stories. And don't forget to comment your thoughts and feelings about this inspiring ending. This is it. Share instantly and spread the love with 5 friends who need to see this. Don't wait, not even one more second. You're part of this journey, and your support means everything.